What's going on, Unstoppable family? So people, by now you should all be aware of the issues surrounding a 7-year-old child being barred from school, all because of the style of her hair. And also the Supreme Court ruled that the school was in its right to do so. Well, since that information came out, several Jamaicans rise up in anger and in defense of the family and this child, saying that, listen, that can't work. It even made it to international headlines. That is how serious it is. Well, the Prime Minister, Mr. Holness, did a press release stating his views on this issue, and this is what the Prime Minister had to say. Our children must not be discriminated against or deprived of their right to an education on the basis of their hairstyle. Prime Minister Holness. Prime Minister Holness has noted with concern the developments surrounding the case of a 7-year-old Jamaican child who was barred from attending school because of the style of her hair. While we await the written judgment to determine the basis of the ruling issued by our Supreme Court, which by media reports have suggested that the child's constitutional rights were not breached, this government does not believe that there should be any law which could be interpreted to deny access to a citizen merely on the basis of their hairstyle. We have, as a rights-sensitive government, always maintained that our children must not be discriminated against, nor deprived of their right to an education because of socio-economic issues, such as inability to afford school fees or socio-cultural issues such as their hairstyle, Prime Minister Holness said. He notes that the Education Ministry has asserted over the years that schools' grooming rules must be rights-based and that no student is to be prevented from admission or attendance at a public educational institution by reason of non-conformity with a school rule prohibiting a particular hairstyle in circumstances where the wearing of that hairstyle by the student is based on religious or health reasons. The Prime Minister says, however, in the present context, this government believes it is time to review and amend the Education Act to reflect a modern and cultural inclusive position that protects our children from being barred from any educational institution on the basis of wearing locks as an ordinary hairstyle, irrespective of religious reasons. So this right has to show that unity in numbers work, because so much I will rise up and talk out about it on social media, and it had to reach back to the Prime Minister years, right? So let's just see what is going to change and if there is a reform going to be put in place for education, because this next video that I'm about to show you right here is one of Empress Golding and the Jamaican for Justice representative speaking about wanting to see a reform in Jamaican education. Let's take a listen.
Friday, I'm so happy to have Roger Malcolm of the Jamaican for Justice advocacy group joining us here tonight to help us to understand what advocacy means, what this current situation of this young girl going to school and having to reach an international press platform about why she was denied justice at school, the injunction that was made. Roger A. Malcolm of Jamaicans for Justice Advocacy Group. How are you?
I'm all right, doing well.
Good to see you, good to hear you. Roger, bring some light for us who don't understand constitutional law, who don't understand law, who don't understand what is happening right now. What is the genesis of the story of the young girl who went to school at Kensington Primary and was told to cut her hair to attend class? Please help us understand.
Sure. So in 2019, the case came to public light actually via an article in the Star, and Jamaicans for Justice responded by offering just legal advice to the family. The offer of legal advice turned into an offer of legal representation through our Redress and Legal Services Unit. And in 2019, we filed a claim in the Supreme Court and sought an injunction against any potential barring of the girl from school because it was close to the start of the school year. So we secured that injunction and initiated the case before the Supreme Court, and that allowed the girl to go through classes this year. and the court said that they would hear the full case in 2020. Since we got the girl in school, the attorney that was working at the case at JFJ moved into his private practice, and the case went with him. And so Jamaicans for Justice did not argue the final case before the court. We initiated the claim and built out what the grounds were originally for the claim. And so at the time when we filed it, I can express what were the constitutional rights concerns. So at the time, Jamaicans for Justice was interested in having the court determine if the rule or the practice at Kensington and other such practices across Jamaica that would have the intention or the effect of limiting access to education or threatening denial of access to education because someone were to wear locks, if those were constitutional, given several constitutional rights that children and families have. For example, children have a constitutional right to publicly funded pre-primary, up to primary education. So if any rule, either at this school or another school, would limit a child's access to education, we would argue that it was unconstitutional. Children's right to expression, to freedom from discrimination on basis of even culture and that kind of stuff. And so these are all constitutional rights that we have, and the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And so we read all other laws and all other practices in that context. That being said, I don't know what the final argument ended up being outside of getting the injunction, which Jamaicans for Justice did at the time. However, certainly, in the absence of a written judgment, all that we're aware of from what happened in court, and we received a few reports from what happened in court, was that the judges just simply advised that they were ruling against Bird and admitted and accepted to providing a written judgment. And that written judgment will really tell us if they determined what they determined. Maybe it could have strictly been technical or procedural. We're not really sure because we don't have the written judgment. And yesterday was a final day of the court term. And so I think at this stage, what we have is really the product, however, of a gap in law. And so our Education Act and Education Regulations, and I just sent you our statement. I'm happy the Prime Minister said that because exactly what we were asking for. You can read it later. But one of the things that we have in Jamaica is our 1965 Education Act and 1980 Education Regulations are really out of date. And what they do is that they don't provide any protections in law or regulation for children from arbitrary or unjust rules. And they have the effect of giving over to schools the total freedom to create school rules. So while you hear the Prime Minister's statement say that school rules should be rights-based, that has no teeth in law, and we have to cut through the language to go to the substance. Similarly, you remember in his 2017 budget presentation, he had committed to reforming the Education Act, and well, it hasn't occurred. And so there have been multiple commitments to reform the Education Act. We have met this particular issue, and it will only take action, not more press statements to get it done. Like we've been saturated with commitments at the highest level now to reform it. We don't really care. We only care about the action. And so what would that reform look like? It does not look like having the government set school rules for every school. What it looks like is putting in place a framework for how school rules will operate in law. So that, for example, school rules can't be discriminatory. They can't deny access based on non-education-based factors. They can't ban an entire hairstyle. Those are the things that we would want to see in a reformed education regulation, so that schools can go out and make all the rules they want to, but they can't cross those minimum standards. And that's a simply modern approach to regulating schools, as simply allowing schools to have their freedom to pass laws and so to pass rules, but those rules can't be totally arbitrary. And what you have right now in Jamaica is a wild variation of school. You can go to one school and wear an afro, another school you can't wear an afro. It's always okay to cream your hair, though, you know. It's never a problem to process your hair. It's always a problem as to how it grows naturally. But that's a different issue for us to take up.
Well, but that's an issue which we will have to discuss in another scoop. How colonized are we? And it's a conversation we must have as we celebrate emancipation, and emancipation of our laws, emancipation of our constitution, emancipation of our policies at all levels, education, institutions, corporate. But let me ask you something. If we are to, as the public viewing right now, to join an advocacy training campaign that says that you can no longer say in your school policy that a child can be banned because of their hairstyle, afro or dreadlock, what do we as the people need to do? I'm just,
Sure.
what do I do to help to change this so-called policy or law that doesn't allow a school to be able to say that, so we don't reach here again? Roger, what does that kind of
noise? Making noise works, you know. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it really does work. And I think this issue has struck a nerve. The second way you can join other advocacy. So, you know, in the coming week, you know, we are going to be providing opportunities for persons. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with JFJ on every other issue. You can just choose this one issue. And to launch, what we're going to launch is either some type of open submission from the public that everybody can involve this sign, just like what we did for the sexual harassment bill that got so many people changing that crazy 1-year limit. Or probably some type of open letter that specifies the specific reforms that the public can sign for a particular period of time. We will ask that persons endorse that and share it widely so that we can get the change that we want. The third would be to, in other organizations, group together and do it on your own. You don't have to do it with us. But target maybe your MP or a decision maker. So everybody in Jamaica knows somebody of influence because our society is so classist. That you have to have, you know, everybody has a little people that they know that has influence. But I myself have gotten so many calls from politicians or other persons who want to figure out how to think about the issue. Many times it's actually supporting people in power to think about the issue correctly. So you can do that as well. I would say also that we've gotten a commitment finally, a recycled commitment from the Prime Minister to reform the education regulations. Everybody should set a timer in their calendar for a period of time that you're not okay with the promise. You know, when other people make promises and don't keep them, they're called lies. When politicians don't do that, it's just that we find another term for it. It's very strange to me. But this is a recycled commitment, so I'm happy it has come up again. It's exactly what we would need, but it needs to actually be honored. Otherwise, it's just getting ahead of the media cycle and not actual leadership. And I'm not really afraid to say that directly.
And I'm glad you called it a recycled commitment, because sometimes these commitments are made and we, the people, do not read, we do not listen, and we don't hold our elected officials accountable. With this young girl and the written judgment of the court that we will see, people are upset, Roger. I don't know if you've had a chance to read some of the comments, and I'm very careful on how I comment because I'm not really clear on the law, the judgment. What is it saying? That the school was right to say that she should have cut her hair because of her hygiene issues? Are you trying to tell me that the school made a judgment without fact? I don't know, because I haven't read the case, that because your thoughts on Black identity and dreadlocks, and you know, I've had locks and my family have locks and all kind of things. Are we saying that the school said, I just want to know what the school said, that you should cut your hair to come to our school because dreadlocks carries lice? Is that what they said?
Sure. So in 2019, one of the positions advanced by the school, when we were very, very involved at the injunction stage, as to why they had this rule, included hygiene reasons, and references were made to lice, and that so the argument is to say it's not discrimination, it's health. And that argument had come, you know. I'm not sure to what extent it made a major part of their submissions as a matter of law, but that justification had been advanced. And what it really shows is, I mean, it just doesn't just show ignorance. I mean, it shows ignorance, but many of these school rules that the rules are rules, people who are like, but it's a rule, who get upset about, it's normally just prejudice dressed up in formal language that makes itself into a handbook. And, you know, as our press release says, Marcus Garvey had it right, you know, none but ourselves can free our minds. And it really is a matter of the mind. People project their prejudice, and education is one of those sectors that really holds on to a lot of the colonial type education systems that really were about policing and civilizing Black people after emancipation. And if you look on the history of our civilizing, in quotes, of course, you look on the history of our education system, it's a lot of those overtones. So it's not surprising that chemical the process you're here. No judgment if people do that. But it's not a problem to chemical the process you're here in school. No school will ever prohibit that. But they would prohibit any natural, many schools, some schools don't. They would prohibit afros, or they prohibit dreadlocks, even if they're neat and tidy. And they don't do the same for Caucasian or Indian students oftentimes. Some schools don't care. Yeah, some schools don't care. Some schools say this is crap. We're going to let our students be however they once they are generally reasonably attired. Other schools take a hard and fast position of banning a whole hairstyle. This variation that you could that you could hop around schools and have different protections of your rights is exactly what the law reform is intended to fix. So we don't have this wild variation.
So let me ask you, Roger, when it comes to law and setting precedents, or just in the courtroom, I mean, let me just state that Garvey did argue in his time that the educational system was created by white men for white men. I just want to put that there for why is it not created for us, and how do we recreate the educational system? I just want to put that out there in this time of emancipation. But let me ask you, when you talk about laws and policies and opening floodgates for anything, our institutions, I mean, where do you draw certain lines? And this is where I think I have a concern, and I believe that anybody with Afro hair, natty gusso, should go to school and not be discriminated against. And if the white kid and the Indian kid can have hair of a certain length, then we can too.
Sure. So and so again, we go to something that fulfills our reasonable purpose, right? So for example, if a school is a uniform and it's a white shirt with a crest and a blue pants, that you want to design the crest in red because you're an artist doesn't really allow you to be identified as a member of that school, for example. So you could reasonably say you can't modify the school uniform, right? That would serve a proper purpose of identifying the student, of generally having a sense of uniformity without rigidity. Similarly, you probably could say that if the school has a shirt tucked in, then they probably would win to have that enforced as something that should be tucked in because it achieves a general purpose that is rational. Banning an entire type of hairstyle doesn't actually fulfill any purpose other than, control and prejudice. And so,
or just the to me, and I'm going to state this now publicly, that I believe that a lot of us are so colonized that we can't even see past it. We don't even understand where our policies and rules and cultural ideas come from, that we are so programmed and sick and injected with the poison of colonization.
Fixing structural things that leave us where we are. So for example, Jamaica had a thriving biodiverse ecosystem. People came to this country and said, oh, the people in England want coffee and bananas and sugar. So let's destroy their ecosystem and plant acres and acres of the same thing that just leave them, that deplete their soil and destroy it. And let's lock them into trade relationships where all they really need to know how to do is to produce export crops. So those trade relationships, right, are structures that were created as a result of colonialism and slavery. It is a form of preparatory justice, for example, for me to get concessions into your market now, for example. It's a form of preparatory justice for me to be able to restructure my economic relations on preferential terms because I never designed those economic relations to begin with. They were thrown upon me, and then after my independence, we said, oh, survive Jamaica. And so I think preparatory justice is more than just money, cash in hand. It is about repairing. That's why it's reparatory, reparations, repair. It's about repairing the things that happen. And for an extremely wealthy country, they can always throw cash anywhere and keep the system. And so I'm very careful to talk about money as a component of reparatory justice, the reparations that people talk about in quant projects, for example, that exchange, getting money from the US and allowing their ship persons to take our fishermen to their countries and try them, you know, and in the shipwright agreement. That's not really actual equal exchange. It's like giving out money and saying and do our bidding elsewhere. And so it's not an equal term. So that's my answer to reparations, Brad. And I'm happy that the discussion is happening again.
I am happy too. And I would ask our viewers to look at the CARICOM reparations 10-point plan. And let me tell you something, Roger. We have to control the narrative. Come, let me tell you something. People are trying to control the narrative who are not Black, of Negro descent, of African descent, who want to control the narrative and tell us where they want to spend their reparatory justice, whatever you call it, distribution of whatever. But we have a plan, and we as a people have to design our advocacy agenda from here to here. I hope you can see me from here to here.
Yes, I can. I also think it involves not doing double speak. And so we can't in one breath say we need independent reparatory justice and then sell all our land to foreign tourism companies and lock our people out. Like, we can't do that shit. I mean, we just can't do that. It's not, it doesn't actually support the vision that we are talking about of a sustainable Jamaica for us.
Yeah.
Like, just look at some of our prime beach and look at the environmental destruction that companies do, that we're even having a debate about the cockpit country because some foreign company got a lease and now we owe them our backside. Like, that, those things are just contradictory fundamentally.
But does it go just okay? So Roger, I'm a young person, for example. Not me, I'm getting old, but you know, for the young people that are watching and who we are responsible to do the work for, do they not see it like, what's the plan? What's the vision? Like, we don't have a legacy plan. We don't have a 40-year plan in our minds, in our homes as a family. Maybe, I'm not sure if the government has it or the nation has it, but we really don't have that, you know, future plan that in 60 years, all our children, what are we working for? Are we just surviving?
Yeah, I mean, Vision 2030 is a thing. However, anybody who's inside that system knows that we are pretty much behind on almost every major cluster of indicators of Vision 2030. Because it's just like this whole statement that came out, you know? I mean, I've been in this work for a bit, so I'm very cynical at times, but anybody can really just say anything and put it on paper, you know? You can put anything down. It's about the work to actually restructure things. And you know, here's the hint that I would give. A lot of the work that needs to happen also involves dismantling some of the systems that give those in power their power. Full stop.
Well, I'm ready to dismantle, and I'm ready to fight for certain things. And I think for the 87 of us now, and those who will come in and out, and I mean, we'll probably get about 2,000, 3,000 after viewing this video, and plus, I want us to work out how we're going to fight. And I think it's important, Roger, that we point people to the advocacy platforms where it's already organized. You understand? It's all good to have, we have to educate the people. And we have to go to the masses to educate, to say, this is what you need to do. I'm all about Vision 2030. I underscore my rescue says Vision 2030 is a fancy distraction. I don't know if it's a distraction or a good goal, but we have to be responsible to play our part in the goal. A place to live, how you go, Roger, live, work, raise families.
And do business.
And do business. Come on, why not? I mean, the thing
I think we don't have consensus on many. When I say values, I don't just mean like good things. We don't have consensus on many of our values. So, for example, another group of persons who are not on this chat, who don't follow an Afrocentric lady with locks, the vision of that means very different rural and urban. Just think about how Jamaica is Kingston half the time when it comes to development, even access to education. I think we need to build a consensus vision of what a just and equitable Jamaica for everyone looks like. I think that we really and truly don't have that, even though some people think this is controversial. Wherever Jamaica, where half the country is okay just locking up people without charging them on the state of emergencies because they're afraid of crime. Not that they shouldn't be afraid of crime, but they don't view the common humanity in a person. Oftentimes, you know, if I think if people think that they're gay, and that's not a Jamaica for everybody to grow old in. And so I will defend, and Jamaican Constitution and the organization will defend the rights of this girl to have locks, the rights of a child who is in need of care and protection, and the rights of somebody who the society hates, because that's not justice. Justice is a vision that says when there's something wrong that's done, it needs to be repaired, and you cannot, from your position, and everybody is privileged in some way. I am privileged as a man, right? So I just can't go into some discussions, for example.
Hold on, I'm glad you said it. Say it again, my brother. Let me turn on the fan and cool down. Let me hear you say it like 10 times, because I've been trying to tell these men how privileged they are, Roger. Let me hear you say it again. Say it again, please.
Now it doesn't feel natural, but I'm a man, and therefore my privilege doesn't allow me to see certain things, and so I can't choose which pieces of justice I care about from where I sit. If we have consensus that we want justice, everybody wants equal rights and justice, you see how quickly that term equal goes away, because it's not a version of, it's not a group that you particularly like, or you can see that perspective. And so for me, one of the reasons why we have this contestation is, for example, a bunch of what type of development they need, and then wonder why we have a bunch of informal settlements, and why people teeth light, and why we have high amounts of crime, because we have so much inequality, for example. And then when, you know, and then when we, anyway, let's talk about corruption. The bottom line is this, and these are not unique problems for Jamaica at all.
Yeah.
There are problems that we have everywhere around the world, where you have issues of power. This is what societies grapple with everywhere, how to make the societies more equitable and humane and just. And so for us to tackle these issues, we also have the added baggage of being a post-colonial society. And we see it pop up in this thing like the dreadlocks case operates. We see it. Independent Jamaica never got a police force. Our police force was formed after the Morant Rebellion to prevent black people at the time from rising up. They don't want to do that right now, but we've never designed a security system like for a just and equitable Jamaica. And so we have a lot of nation building left to do. Little things like what we want to do now with Education Act, which is don't allow people to ban your children from going to school because of more locks. That's nation building. And so we have an unfinished project here called Jamaican Society that we have to work on. You know, I'm in this chat with you now, and I have a fancy title as executive director. But if someone sees me on the road with my hair the way it is, or I'm barefoot half the time, I'd be profiled and locked up. You know, oftentimes, you know, I've experienced that. I've literally experienced police not being able to recognize me and do them things.
Let me just go there for a minute, Roger. You're a lawyer.
I'm actually not a lawyer.
What is your profession as an executive director? As well, let's let me not ask you that. Let me not ask you that. You're the executive director for Jamaicans for Justice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you are like exemplary. You're just like at the top of this advocacy group, and you have your African hair, and you go road, your rags and thing, what we call it, your rags and thing, your nice gear, which I've seen some of the very richest people in California in barefoot, slippers, and shorts and shirt, and long hair and comb, and they're the richest people walking through Hollywood. I've seen it and witnessed it because I have lived in Hollywood. And I'm saying, you feel that you would be targeted because of that look as a highly educated man leading one of the great.
Until I open my mouth, when you are able to actually change the profile a little bit, you actually get access to a little bit more experiences. So I'm not at any real risk, because I know I'm largely a privileged person. I run an organization that hires lawyers. I mean, I'm not in deep fear, for example, of interacting with the police in the way that many people are. But until that recognition is there, I mean, the other day I was arrested for videotape. Yeah, I'm not making it up. The other day I was arrested because I fit the profile, and then somebody told me I look like somebody who committed a murder and will lock me up. And then I got released on the roadside eventually. I mean, because after I cut my hair,
Hold on, pull up that. No, pull up that. Emancipate yourself. Let me run at you. No, stop. Let me breathe.
So,
You were what?
yeah, I mean, I was, arrest the whole arrest thing. It happens to people. I mean, and strangely enough, I'm not the first person that lived there to be arrested and trumped up rubbish. And so, my team has been saying what you're going to do about it. And then that strange way, I want to do like restorative justice or like mediation. I just think the guy is just like dead inside. I mean, and this is what happens with oftentimes with police abuse. It's I don't think many people go into the police force like saying I want to abuse people.
Right.
They go into a culture that predisposes them to those situations. We also have a high crime situation where we don't have the structures in place and the systems in the police force that support those things to the degree that they need to. And last year I spent a number of months training police at the police college, and it was really illuminating for me to also show how much work we have left to do. We give this exercise, we have this activity after we teach them about human rights, because you have to start with their rights, or any group, not just the police. You start with the person's rights. So they have to tell them what are the rights that they have and get their understanding. Because if you start with somebody else's rights, it sounds like you're selling them something. And so we started with discussing their rights, and they give their rights. And their rights normally, the first right they come up with are about the right to rest, liberty, protection from search, life, them kind of things. You get the women's rights, children's rights, but it's always good to see what the people care about whenever as if you're a human rights trainer. And then so we give them an activity to come up with their country and to give their people just 5 rights. So we limit it to 5 rights and make a demonstration that you can't limit rights later down. But we just give them this limit. And so then they get into the whole student mode now, they form them groups and name them country. And then they come up, and I can tell you without fault, in one group it was 2 of them, but each cohort, and we did 3 cohorts, had a right about executing or extraditing gay people. And then they had another right about to smoke. Or executing. Executing was a right that they wanted. One right that we got was a right to a purge, and there was no law, and people could just do what they wanted and kill people to solve their disputes. And then the other right was a right to be able to smoke marijuana at will, which I fully support, but it just wouldn't be something I would choose as my top 5 rights.
The truth of the matter is a lot of changes need to be done in the whole system overall. Not only the educational system, but let's see if this is going to be a start for the change. Alright, people, if you want to watch the full entire reasoning between Empress and the representative, you can check out Empress Golding's page on Instagram right there, where you could watch her live streams whenever she does videos like this. Talk to me down in the comment section. More to hear your opinion on this one. Until next time, no matter what, don't make nobody stop you. I'm unstoppable, and I'm out.
Right now, you know we unstoppable.